this is our second online video tutorial digital art class thingy. That's the official name. Welcome back. I'm going to do a better job this time. I'm going to try to not ramble so much. I'm going to try to not use the words and K as much. So you guys count. Actually, don't count. That'll be bad. Anyway, there, I just said it. I did it. So today we're going to be doing our Kirby picture, the watercolor Kirby. So those of you who are currently in my classes who got a packet from me, you should have all the stuff you need to do this already in your packet, but we'll go over supplies in just a minute. I want to tell you a quick though about this picture. As we were kind of wrapping up classes for this year, we were trying to get ready for our art show. And so I had a whole bunch of stuff scheduled in a certain order that I wanted to get done so we could be ready for the art show. And then all this pandemic stuff hit and kind of blew up all those plans. But as we were trying to finish up those things, one of my students, my buddy John, drew me this picture of Kirby. He thought it would be really cool if we could turn it into a painting and work on it together as a class, which I think is awesome also. I just didn't have any time at the time, and I told him, I don't think we're going to have any time. We're going to be out of classes. I don't think we're going to be able to make it work. And I showed it to my other classes also, and they all seemed excited about it. So I promised him I would try to make it work if I could. And then again, all this pandemic stuff happened and everything, all my plans went out the window. And so the first thing I did was try to find out a way that we could make John's Kirby drawing work. So this is the watercolor I painted based off of John's drawing for me. And I think it turned out awesome. And that's what we're going to work on today. Okay. So just want you to have a little background there. John, you did a fantastic job. This is for you, dude. Okay. As we get started, the things you're going to need, you should have a piece of watercolor paper. You guys know, those of you who have it in your packet, you know what this is. All right. Remember to draw lightly on it. We want to be really careful with it. Okay. You also should have some watercolors. This is the packets. I get these from Oriental Trading Company, and I think they're fantastic. The paper you paint on, I think, matters more than the paints themselves, in my experience. So this will have a little plastic tray on it. You want to take that off. It has a little paintbrush that comes with it. This thing is garbage. You can use it to like go out to your mom's car and scrub all the crumbs out of the cracks that you guys got in there. Something like that. But for this, like, we don't want it. We don't want that, okay? So now go clean up the paintbrush you just threw. Anyway, you can have your watercolor paints, your cakes. We also have, I'm using these 3 brushes today. You can use different ones if you want, but this is what I'm using. So this is kind of a medium-sized flat paintbrush, a medium-sized round brush, and a smaller round brush that we can do details with. You're also going to need a pencil because we're going to sketch out our drawing. And then the optional things, you're going to need something to hold your water in. They are watercolors. They need water. I like to use these little cottage cheese or sour cream cups, the 16 ounce. It's an awesome size. But we're also going to be tracing Kirby's body, and this size just happens to be exactly the right size. If you don't have one of these, you can find something else that's a similar size. This is about 4.5 inches across to trace, or you can just draw a circle that's about the right size and it'll be great. We're going to be working with a lot of organic shapes today. So exact perfect circles and perfect ovals, and that doesn't matter. We just want to get close, right? So if you have one of these, this would be fantastic for tracing it. And then for putting your water in after we draw it. It also would help if you have a paper towel and a pencil. Again, they're not necessary, but those would be helpful. Before we get going, I want you to make sure that you understand how to pause and restart and play on your video. There's a really good chance that I'm going to go a little bit faster than you're used to, than you're ready to. So if I get ahead of you, just pause the video, get caught up to where I'm at, and then push play again, and we'll keep going. Okay? So let's get started. Go ahead and gather your art supplies, and I'm going to change my camera angle and we'll get started. All right, I think we're ready to get started. So just as a reminder, right now we just need our watercolor paper and a pencil. You make sure when you're drawing on watercolor paper, we want to make sure that we're drawing really lightly. In fact, anytime you're sketching anything, you want to be sketching it really, really lightly. That makes it so that if you make a mistake and you have to erase something, it's easy to erase. So again, you don't want to be pushing hard with your pencil. You're going to barely softly touch the paper so you can barely see your lines. I'm going to have to paint, or I'm going to have to draw a little bit darker than you guys will because I want you to be able to see it. But just remember, and I'll say it lots of times, make sure you're drawing really lightly, okay? So we're going to start out with this cup to trace. I'm going to put it right in the middle where I think about the middle of the paper is. No need to measure or anything, but we're going to put it about in the middle and then move it down a little ways. So I should have, I don't know, about enough room for my hand down here, maybe a little bit more for you guys because your hands are probably a little bit smaller, and more space on the top, okay? When I trace, I want to push down really nice and hard with this hand that's holding the cup in place, but my hand that's holding the pencil is going to barely touch the paper. So I make a really nice, light trace. I just bumped over there. That's okay. We're going to have to erase some of these lines. So make sure, again, that you're drawing really lightly. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is to draw a curved line starting from where we think about the middle of the top is to the middle of the bottom, but it's going to curve over right about here. You maybe want to draw a really light little line just off the left side of your circle. So I'm going to make this curved line that goes through that one and down to the bottom. Now this line is going to have to be erased later on, so make sure you're doing it lightly. We're going to do one more line that's just going to go straight across the middle. Now this helps for us. We want our Kirby's not going to be looking straight towards us. He's going to be turned just a little bit. So because his head is turned a little bit, if we have this curved line, it helps us to see where the middle of his face should be, and it's going to help us to get his eyes and mouth in the right place. So we're just going to leave those for a minute. I want you to come down here and we're going to draw a diagonal line that's maybe 1.5 inches long, or let's see, I like to measure with fingers. So it's probably a little bit more than 3 fingers long, or a little bit less than 3 fingers long for me. And then I'm going to turn this angled line, this diagonal line I just made, into just kind of an organic oval, right? It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't matter the exact shape of it, but you're going to turn that into an oval. Now I'm going to go back in. This is the bottom of one of Kirby's feet that he's kicking up. He's a happy dancing Kirby. So I'm going to go back in and erase those lines. A lot of times I would just go in and erase all the lines at the end, but since you guys are following along, I want you to make sure you know which ones to erase and which ones don't need to be erased. Now we're going to come over here, just a little ways over on the bottom, so kind of on this bottom curve, and I'm going to curve out like this and back up in. There's his other foot. That one's a little bit big, but that's okay. He's a cartoon, so it's all right. Next thing I'm going to do is come up over here on the side about where this horizontal line meets up, and we're going to do another organic oval over here. It's going to go part way out of the circle and part way into the circle, and I'm going to go ahead and erase the lines that are inside that. That's his one arm or hand or wing, whatever Kirby has. His flipper, I don't know. Anyway, that's what's going to be holding his microphone over there. The next thing we're going to do is to put in his eyes. Now, like I told you, this curved line we did right here is showing us where his face is. So if he had a nose, it would be coming right off the middle of this, right off of this line. He doesn't have a nose, but we want to make sure that we've got each eye, one on either side of the line. So his eyes are just big ovals. So I'm going to start up pretty high, go down a little bit underneath that line and back up. There's his first oval eye. The other one is going to be on the other side of this line. Now mine, it looks like my hand's covering it a little bit. That's kind of weird, actually. I'm going to fix that. My oval got a little strange. We're gonna try again. Okay. I want to make sure that my first lines are gone from that. Anyway, the idea here is that you want one eye on either side of that middle line. And depending on where your hand went and where your line went, it may be a little bit different. But that's how mine worked out this time. You can see on my original one, his eye is not overlapping his hand. I'm not sure how I did that on this one, but that's okay. His mouth, we're going to come down here and do a straight line across. Again, we want it to cross over this curved line because that's the middle of his face. And then we're going to do a big U that goes down and back up to the other side. Inside of here, actually, we're going to go ahead and erase this line now. We're going to erase the whole thing, that whole original curved line I told you we were going to erase. Go ahead and erase that whole thing now. And then also go ahead and erase your horizontal line that we did for the middle of his face. Okay, inside his mouth, we're going to give him a tongue also. So I'm going to come down just a little ways on the right side here. I'm going to curve up a little bit and then down the other side, and that's his little crooked tongue going on in there. For his eyes are going to be kind of creepy for a minute, but once we get color in there, they'll look better. But for right now, while we're drawing them, they're a little weird. At the bottom here, we're going to do a curved line, so it makes kind of a like a crescent moon kind of shape on the bottom of his eye, right? Erase a little bit of that so you guys can see it better. We're going to do that on both eyes. This other one's going to be a little bit trickier because I covered it up with my hand, but that's okay. At the top up here, we want to do a circle. Your circle should be pretty big, but it shouldn't be touching the sides. You want to have space all the way around it inside there. This part is going to stay white, and all of this part is going to be black. So you want to be able to have space to paint some black around it. Okay, that is his eyes. We haven't drawn his other hand yet because I want to do his headphones first, but we're going to do the microphone before the headphones. So his microphone is over in this hand. So just going straight up from this hand, we're going to do just a really slight curved line, about 1 inch long probably. And then you're going to give that, it almost should look kind of like a ice cream cone right now. Okay, we're going to give that like a scoop of ice cream, give it a round top. Next thing you're going to draw from the sides of this, I'm going to do an angled line that goes down to his hand, stop, and then behind his hand. Same thing on the other side. This is going to be a little bit angled so it gets skinnier as it goes down. And then we're going to give it a curved bottom. Now this is his little microphone. All of your microphones are going to end up a little bit different than mine, and it's okay. Everyone's picture is going to end up different, and that's the way it's supposed to be, right? Because we're all different. In fact, every time I draw it, it comes out different, so it's okay. All right, next thing is going to be his headphones. So I'm going to start with the headphone that's over on this side. Because his face is turned, we're not going to hardly even see the earpiece that's on this side, but we will see the one that's on this side. So, and we want it to be about the same size the eyes are. So if you can imagine that coming straight over here, I'm going to draw just kind of a slightly curved line that's about the size of the eyes. And next to that, I'm going to do a second one that matches it. And then kind of curve those to connect them. And then we're going to do kind of a half circle coming out the other direction. That's the other side of his headphone. Oh, that one sticks way out. That's okay. Mine's a little bit different than it was my first time. I'm going to go ahead and erase the lines inside that. Okay, so there's one side of his headphones. Now, the other side is going to be about even. If you've got mine, if I go straight over here, most of it's behind this microphone. You figure out where yours is. You may have a little bit more space. You may have to draw a little bit more than that, but mine ended up with just this little teeny spot right there. You can see on my original one that shows there's a little bit more of it here. Anyway, it's different each time. The next thing we're going to do is connect this headphone over to this headphone. So we're just going to draw a line that kind of follows about the shape of his head and connects it down to this side. And then one more. This one can get a little bit bigger as it comes closer to us. So that's just the piece of his headphones that go over the top of his head. Now he still needs another hand on this side, and this hand we want it to look like it's holding onto his headphone, like it's holding onto the side of his head. So from right over here on the side, I'm just going to draw another little curved line that comes out and meets up with the body. Okay, so this part's going to be pink because that's his other hand, like this hand or flipper or whatever we decided it was. All right, that's the basic part of Kirby is done. Next thing we want to do is draw some ground down here. And I just did kind of a swervy line, but I want to purposely miss where Kirby is. So I'm going to try to, so there's a little bit of space. I'm going to go under there, come up a little bit over. Okay, so I kind of have this like swervy line going on down here, but I want him to look like he's jumping up in the air above it. Yours may be a little bit different than that, and that's okay. Next thing we're going to do is draw like a spotlight shining up from behind him. So what I want to do is find the middle of my paper, the bottom of it down here, and I'm going to put just a little line. And then we're going to use our ruler and line up from that line. I'm going to use this side of it. From that line off the edge of the paper up here. You want to go as close to the corner as you can. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just move mine up a little bit. Let me go right about there. Okay. When you're drawing this, you don't want to draw, we're not going to draw in the ground part, and we're not going to draw in Kirby. So you're going to do it. There should be a little spot right here between his foot and the ground. And then you'll have another spot coming up from Kirby all the way up to the edge. Okay. There's one side of it. My other side, I'm going to line up the same way. So going from that line up here to about the corner, or a little bit down from the corner. Again, I'm going to draw not in the ground part. I want to go from the top, from the horizon line, the top of the ground to his foot. This, I've got a little part right here that shows. And then from his microphone up. So you don't want to draw those lines through him because that's in the background. That's back behind him. You go ahead and erase this little spot. When you're erasing your lines, make sure you erase them really well, because I don't know if I said this before, but watercolors are translucent, which means we can see through them. So if you can see your lines right now on your paper, you're going to be able to see them when you get watercolor paints on there as well. Not quite as well, but you're still going to be able to see them. So you want to make sure you're erasing as well as you can. That's part of why we draw so light. Keep your picture nice and clean if you can. Okay, now from here, the rest of the stuff is kind of optional. You can do, I'm going to show you in mine. In my original one, I wrote Kirby kind of in block letters up here, which is great, but it's kind of tricky. If you don't want to do block letters, you can just do normal letters, and that's okay too. In fact, maybe on this one, I'll do just regular letters. But so you can see, you can do block letters. You can also do, you don't have to write Kirby at all if you don't want to. You could just leave that part and do some other things, like I did some music notes. Another thing that I think would be cool, so I did 4 music notes around him, but another thing that would be cool would be to do maybe stars or something, because he's like a rock star, right? So if you just want to do like a big star and a couple music notes, that would be fine. I'm going to show you this time, I think I'm going to do Kirby, but I'm not going to do it in block letters. Maybe I'll do it in a fancy cursive-y one this time. But the best way to start when you're doing words, it really helps to give yourself a line to write on. So I'm just going to try to make that kind of flat and really, really light. I don't know if you guys can even see that. The other thing that helps is to find out what your middle letter is, what the middle of whatever word you're doing is, and try to get it in the middle. So because we did Kirby, K-I-R-B-Y, that's 5 letters long, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The middle of 5 is 3, right? So we should have 2 at the beginning, 1 in the middle, 2 at the end. That means on this painting, K and I should be off the left side, R should be in the middle, B and Y should be off the right side. So if we find about the middle, say it's right about here, that should be about where my R ends up. All right, I didn't think this through very well before I got started. I don't think I'm going to do cursive, actually. I'm just going to do kind of a fun block letter, or a fun capital letter, but not in blocks. So I'm going to do like a K. I'm going to make my I be a little bit crooked. Here's my R going right here in the middle. B is going to be crooked the other direction. And then a Y. Okay. So that's how I'm going to do the word Kirby. And then I want to erase these lines that I drew to make sure that they don't show up through. And I might have to fix my letters again a little bit, but that's a way to help you get things centered when you're doing words. it's still a little bit tricky. It always ends up a little bit different than you originally planned. And then when you paint on it, it's going to end up a little bit different again, and that's okay. Okay, the other things I've got his name on there, and I'm going to go ahead. I think this time, maybe I'll do a couple stars this time and some music notes. So I'm going to do kind of up on this side, I'm going to do a star. I'm going to show you an easy way to do a star. If you do like a letter A, so do from the top down, and then the line across, but instead of doing it up kind of high like a capital, or sorry, instead of doing it down low like a capital A normally would, you're going to do it up high and go through, all the way through. And then I can connect this side down to this point and this side down to this point, and then erase those middle lines. That's kind of an easy way to do a star. So it's like a letter A, but the top, the line across goes up really high instead of down lower where it normally is, like a big capital letter A. And then connect the ends. Okay, there's my star. And then over here, I'm going to do a music note up kind of high. Down here, maybe I'll do another star down here and a music note over there to kind of even things out. So down here, I'm going to do another star. Again, like an A, like a capital letter A, except the line across is going to be up high and then long. And then I'm going to connect the points down to make my star. I'm sure there's other things you guys could do that you could come up with that would be super cool. Just remember that you're going to paint them in. So you don't want to get too technical. You want to keep things kind of simple so it's easy for you to paint. But you guys go ahead and use your creativity and do whatever you want to do for this part. One more music note over here. So I'm going to have this one come down like that, curve around. This time I'm going to give it a little flag. I don't know if you guys have seen these. These are eighth notes in music. Okay, that's how I'm doing my Kirby today. Now go ahead and clean up, catch up whatever you need to, finish your drawing, pause this until you're ready, and then get playing again. But you want to take a minute and clean up any lines. Make sure you erase things really good. Make sure you don't have smears. Make sure you can see which lines you want to do, and you get rid of other lines that you don't want to be there. I'm actually going to take just a second and move this music note a little bit because I don't like how close it is to the side. So go ahead and clean up your thing. Get your painting stuff ready to go, and we'll come back and do the painting part. We're ready to get started painting. I've got my water filled up right here. I've got my watercolor paints. Now you guys will notice I've got some problems with my watercolor paints. I messed up and I dropped this and some of the little cakes popped out. If something like that happens to you, it's okay. You just put them right back in there. Be careful not to pop them out, but they'll be just fine. Okay, those ones popped out. This one popped out. My black popped out and just shattered. I'm going to go ahead and use this one because I want to show you that it's fine. It's not a big deal. It'll work out. It might be a little bit trickier, but we're going to work it out. The other thing I was going to show you, I'm also going to use this one for a couple of paints. This is one that I used previously when I painted before, so some of these have been used. You can see some white starting to show through on the yellow and the blue. I just want to use this one because I want to show you that there is a lot more paint in here than you think there is. So we're going to just keep using them. There's also going to be a couple of times during this that I will probably just stop talking and speed up the video while I fill in areas so that we can get through the video a little bit faster. So anytime you're painting in some area, watch me get mine painted in, and then you can pause it and go ahead and start on yours. And then as soon as you get that area filled in, push play again. We'll get going, okay? So the best way, watercolors need water. I'm starting with my medium-sized flat brush. Gonna get it wet, and I'm gonna make sure to get all my colors wet. I'm actually gonna use the yellow and blue from the other one just so I can show you, but I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of these wet. I'm gonna start with pink because that's what I need soon. You guys can use different colors for yours if you want in different places. That's fine. This black's gonna be a big pain, I can tell, but it's gonna work. You just wait and see. Okay, I gotta rinse that black out. They're really good. So I just got all of them wet except the yellow and blue because I'm gonna use those on this one. So go ahead and get those wet. Okay, so I'm starting out with my flat brush because we're gonna do some bigger spaces. So I'm gonna start by painting Kirby. Each time you get water first and then paint and then paint. Start painting, okay? You don't want to rub it around in the paint and then add more water because what that does is take all the paint you just got on your brush and it puts it in your water. That's not what you're going for here. We want to make sure that we're getting some water from there, adding it to our paint. Rub your brush around in there really good. The more you rub it around, the darker your colors are going to get for you, the brighter they're going to be. So if your colors are really light, you need to rub it around in that paint longer. Okay, I rub that around a whole bunch of times, and then I'm going to go ahead and start painting my Kirby. I'm going to paint all of his body. As I'm doing this, this is different than acrylic paints. We don't want to, this one is definitely a fill in the blank kind of thing. We want to fill in the lines. You don't want to go over your lines. So I don't want to accidentally paint inside his eyes. I don't want to paint on the microphone, right? I only want to paint the parts that I want to be pink. So you have to take your time to make sure and get in all the right areas. Grab a little bit more water, rub this brush around in there really, really good. And then I'll go ahead and keep painting. Right there, I went over the line because his hand is pink, so that's okay. I want that part to be pink. I am going to go ahead and go right over the top of his mouth because we want the tongue to be pink, but we don't want, or inside the mouth is going to be red, but the red's going to cover over the pink just fine. With a flat brush, you can use the flat side to fill in fatter areas and then use kind of the skinnier side. Use it in a skinny way, take it in skinnier areas like this. I went the other direction. Okay, I'm gonna speed this up and just finish the Kirby. Okay, I got the pink part of my Kirby all filled in. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do red. His 2 feet are gonna be red and a little bit inside his mouth. I don't think I'm gonna do in his mouth quite yet, but we'll go ahead and do his 2 feet. So I rinsed out my brush really well by pushing it on the bottom of the water container. Okay, I'm doing little X's like this. If this is the bottom of the container, I'm doing little X's and I'm rubbing my brush back and forth to help get the paint out there really good. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the red. I want to rub it around in there really good. The more you rub it around, the darker it's going to be. Ooh, that's nice. And I want to be careful to try to stay in the lines. If you guys want to switch to a smaller brush, you can. Mine is bleeding just a tiny bit because this pink is still wet and I touched it with my red paint, so it's starting to bleed just a little bit onto that. It's okay. Because I kind of like that look, but you just have to be aware that wherever you put paint, the paint is going to go anywhere the water is. So if you touch even another spot that was already painted, they're going to kind of bleed together. If you don't want that to happen at all, you can just wait a little bit of time in between each color and it'll give it some time to dry. Okay, those are his feet. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse the red out of that brush. And I'm gonna use my small round brush with the red to do inside his mouth. Okay, this is getting really thick in there because I let it sit for a little while. So I might need to actually add even a little bit more water to my brush. Okay, well. And while I have this, I'm now going to go ahead and rinse out some of the red. Not the whole thing, but some of the red. So I'm going to rinse out a little bit of my red. I'm actually going to touch it on here so I can see that it's been rinsed out a little bit. It's not quite so dark. I want it to be just kind of pinkish. And I'm going to go back in and do a little bit of his tongue with just a tiny bit of red. To give kind of some depth in there. We also, while we have just a tiny bit of red on our paintbrush, if you want to give him his little cheeks, this Kirby's got some little rosy cheeks. They're just kind of like this on each side. That side just kind of blended in, but that's okay. Okay, I'm gonna rinse that out of my brush. Now I'm gonna go back to my bigger flat brush and we're gonna work on the background for a minute. So what I wanna do first, let's see, I'm trying to decide right now what I wanna do first. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do my ray back here, the spotlight that comes up behind him. So on mine, I did yellow for the bottom part and I had it bleed into the orange. If you want to do the whole thing orange or the whole thing yellow, that's okay, but I'm going to show you how I did it this way. I'm going to go ahead and start with the orange because I don't want to touch what I've got wet in here. So I'm going to start with the orange part. So I got some water on my brush. I'm going to get my orange in here. Rub it around really good. Now, because of my stars here, I have to be a little bit careful. I think I'm going to do them yellow. So because orange is darker than the yellow, I don't want to paint over the top of those. So you do want to be a little bit careful. Now, one other thing with watercolors, most of the time we don't paint right off the side. I usually will kind of leave an unfinished edge. So if you look at this, you can see that the blue comes over close to the edge, but I don't actually go the whole way off. The color doesn't go the whole way off. You can choose how to do yours, but I like it like this. I like to purposely leave some white around it. On mine, I can go right over my letters because I didn't do them as block letters. If you did do block letters, you probably want to paint around the block letters, and that's going to take a little bit of time. So just always make sure, I guess the big thing here is that you make sure that you are paying attention to where you're putting color. You don't want to just paint and accidentally paint over the top of something else that you didn't want painted. So just always be aware of what you're doing with your paintbrush, where you're going with it. Think before you paint. Think about where you want it to be. Okay, I got kind of carefully around those stars, so I'm just gonna kind of fill the rest of this in with orange, and I'm gonna speed it up a little bit for that part. I wanna keep this bottom edge just kind of rough. Okay, now that I've got that orange part filled in, I'm gonna go ahead and start going right immediately with the yellow. I'm gonna get a little bit of water. So this is just water. I didn't rinse my brush out yet from the orange. I just added a little bit of water to it. It's okay if you go over the top of the headphones right there because that part is going to be black. Okay, so right now I'm just adding a little bit of water to this little section right here. I'm kind of bringing the orange down just a tiny bit, but just with water. Now I'm gonna rinse that out a little bit and switch to yellow. I'm using this yellow because, again, I want to show you how much paint is actually in here. So with this yellow, I'm going to start from his head and come up and kind of blend into the orange area that I just added water to. And that's going to help those to kind of blend together. So that yellow's going where I want it to be yellow, but it's also, I've got it going right up into the orange. I'm gonna be careful across his head they don't accidentally get, oops, I just did it. I don't get paint down onto his head. It just happened though. And it's okay a little bit. Now I want this yellow to be a little bit brighter down here, so I'm gonna rinse out my brush because I got a little bit of orange in it where I mixed it. I'm gonna rinse out my brush, wipe off the extra. I'm actually gonna squeeze out a little bit of extra water. So this is more of just a pure paint. Go ahead and add some more on there. I just want this nice and bright. And you guys can probably see in my paint tray here how it's getting a lot of white in there now. There's not very much yellow left. A lot of times we think that means it's almost out, but there is still, if you can see any yellow, there is still plenty of paint in there. Now I'm going to come down and go ahead and fill in down here as well. We want to make sure we don't miss any of our spotlight while we're doing it with the yellow. If you need to switch to a different brush, that's okay. A little bit smaller brush, that might, if that helps you, that's okay. I also have this little teeny spot right here that it came through, so I'm going to make sure to do that yellow. I'm also, while I have the yellow going, I'm going to go ahead and do these, paint my 3 stars in with yellow. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush though. So rinse that out. And then I'm going to go to my small brush, load up the yellow on there really good. And I'm going to go ahead and paint these 3 stars. Okay, while I also have this yellow on there, I'm going to go ahead and do, I want my Kirby's mic handle, is what it's called. I want that to be kind of a gold looking color, so I'm going to keep it with yellow, and I'm going to add a tiny bit of orange to it also, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So right now I'm just going to fill it in with the yellow. Okay, there's my yellow. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse the yellow out of my brush, and we're gonna go back to orange for just a minute. I'm gonna show you. On here, I used a little bit of orange to make some lines that kind of make it look like that is a spotlight shining out. I also added a little bit of orange to the yellow parts in here, to the yellow part of his mic stand, to make it look more like gold. So that's what we're gonna do next. I'm gonna get some orange back on my brush. I'm using the small brush still. This time I want more water and a little bit less paint this time. I want it to be pretty runny because I'm just gonna do some quick lines. I'm actually gonna turn this sideways. It's a little bit easier for me to try to do some kind of fast lines. We want some of them to be closer together and some of them a little bit farther apart. And they don't all need to be exactly the same. A little bit more water. Okay, so there's my little spotlight lines. The other thing I'm going to do while I have this little bit of orange on there, I'm going to go ahead and add some orange. This is pretty watered down. I'm going to add a little bit of orange to kind of the edges of this microphone. And kind of right under his hand, that's going to help give a little bit of a shadow right there. Okay. Go ahead and rinse that out. I'm going to switch back to my flat brush again. Maybe we won't even use this middle-sized pointed one. I think I might not even use that today, but that's okay. So I'm going to switch back to my flat brush, and this time we're going to give this stuff a minute to dry, and we're going to work on the grass for just a minute. I'm going to go ahead, when I do the grass, I'm going to go ahead and paint right over the top of this note because my music note's going to be filled in with black, and black will cover the green. So got my brush wet. I'm going to rub it around in this paint really good. Now when I do this part, I want the top of the grass, or the part nearest the horizon line, closest to the line, to be the darkest, and I want it to get lighter as it goes down and off the paper. You can see it on there. So I'm gonna, while I've got this nice fresh paint loaded up on my brush, I'm gonna go ahead and do next to the line first, next to the horizon line first. And then I'm gonna start to pull it down into the grass. And then, without even getting more green on my brush, because I have plenty there, I'm gonna go ahead and just add some water to my brush and keep pulling this paint down lower and lower. Sorry, I'm like losing my voice. I've had bad allergies. My allergies have been so bad for the last little while. And again, I'm not going all the way off, just part way down. Okay, now I want to give that green just a little bit of time to dry before we start doing the background again. So I want to do my microphone right here real quick. So because I want that to be just a light gray, it's going to be mostly water with a tiny bit of black. I don't know if you guys can see my little piles of black, my little crumbled black paint that I put up there has turned in, because I added water to it, it's kind of just turned into this puddle of black paint now. There's still some chunks in there, but I only want just the teensiest bit of black right now and mostly water. So that worked out perfect. So I'm going to start painting that on there. That's a little bit darker than what I want. So that means I'll just add a little bit of water to my brush and keep rubbing it around. I don't want to add any more pigment. I don't want to add any more of the actual color because I want this to just be a light gray. If yours got too dark, you can go ahead and use your paper towel to carefully blot up some of the paint, and it'll take some of that off, and then you can just use water to spread it around till you get the right color. A lot of watercolor is just experimenting till you figure out the best way for you to make it work. In fact, I'm going to show you an example of how to pull that paint off. So I rinsed out the black from my brush, so I have just water on here. I've just recently painted this, obviously. I'm going to add a little bit of water to that, and then use my paintbrush. I kind of stick my paper towel, I kind of stick my finger in there. See how I pulled that off of there? That I'm going to keep it like that because I want it to look like there's a little reflection, like it's made out of metal. So I'm going to leave it like that. I'm also, with just some gray, I'm going to go ahead and paint this headphone over here. So again, I just want just a watered down black. And then same thing here, I'm gonna rinse a little bit out. So this is just water. I'm gonna put a little bit of a shine in here. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of water in a couple of spots, and when I put my finger in here and dab it on there, it's gonna pull some of the paint back off. Okay, we're gonna switch back over to the flat brush, and I'm gonna go ahead and do my blue now. So again, this one I wanted to go from this one because I just wanna show you how far this paint will actually go. When you're done with this painting, you should have enough paint left over to do several more paintings of whatever you wanna do. So this one, same thing, I want, kind of similar idea as the grass, where I want it to be darkest in the middle part, and then I want it to get lighter as it goes towards the outside. So I'm gonna start out, I'm gonna focus my blue up here near Kirby. If it's easier for you to use a different brush that's a little bit skinnier, that's okay. Okay, as I've got most of my darker colors on there now, I want it to start lightening up, and so I'm just gonna add just water and just kind of keep pulling that paint away. As you see, I went over the top of my music note again because that's gonna be painted with black, and the black will just go right over the top of that, no problem. So if you're getting kind of big pools of paint in certain areas, you can kind of just pull that paint away and out into other areas to help it spread out and be a little bit more even. And then you can use just water to go right out to the edges and make it lighten up as it goes. Okay, that's one side. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and rinse out my brush, rinse the blue out of there, and I'm gonna switch over again to my little round brush, and we are going to add, this Kirby's got blue. I pointed at the picture, you can't see. This Kirby's got blue, this bottom moon shape thing we did in his eyes is blue, so we're gonna go ahead and use the small brush to fill that in with blue as well. I want this to be a nice deep blue, so I'm going to put lots of paint on my brush. Rub it around and they're really good. Use the very tip of it, the very point, to get up into these skinny little cracks. The more you use the tip of your brush, the skinnier your lines are going to be, and the harder you push down, the thicker your lines are going to be. So if you've got to do a really skinny little spot, make sure you're using the very tip of your brush. I'm actually going to do one more layer over it because I want this to be nice and dark. If you did it really wet, then it's probably not dry enough to do another layer over it yet. So you might have to let it wait or let it dry for just a second, and that's okay. You can pause the painting for a minute. You can pause the video, I mean, for a minute. See if you can get it to dry just a little bit by waving your paper around just very, very carefully, a tiny bit. And then push play and go ahead and finish painting. Okay, there's his eyes. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse that part out of my brush. All right, we pretty well have everything filled in except for the black areas now. If you wanted to do the word Kirby, if you did block letters, you can paint that in with whatever color you wanted to do. Like mine, I did green at first, and then I used that technique like I showed you when we made these little reflections. I actually used just some water and rubbed it in a couple spots, then dabbed it off with my paper towel, and that's how I made it look like I had these little kind of shiny reflection spots. You can do that or not do that, whatever you want to do. Actually, before we do black, we're going to go in and add a few little shadows. So we're going to take, I'm going to keep with my, actually this time I'm going to go ahead and switch to this medium round brush. I want to go into Kirby and I want to make the outsides of him a little bit darker pink. So he's had plenty of time to dry for a minute. Using my medium paintbrush, I'm going to get some more pink on my brush. Really lots of nice deep pink color. I want to rub that around the paint really good. I don't want this to be light. I'm trying to go darker. Then I'm going to go ahead and add some paint around the edges. And anywhere where I think maybe there should be a shadow. So especially around the bottom of him. Now this is kind of a hard line, so I'm going to add just some water and go over the edge of that, and that's going to help to kind of blend that down in. So it's not quite such a hard line between where I just barely put more paint and where I originally had the paint. I'm going to make this hand back here be a little bit darker pink because it's kind of hiding behind his headphones back there. I'm going to do the same thing with the edges of this hand. I'm going to make them be a little bit darker. Let's add some cool dimension to it, to our painting. We already did a little bit to his tongue, but I think I'm going to do a little bit more with the pink and try to kind of even out my lines a little bit there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and rinse. That's all I want to do with the pink. I'm going to rinse that out, and I'm going to do the same thing now with the red. So I'm going to go ahead and rub this around in my red really good. Get some nice dark red on there. I might need a teeny bit more water. Mine's pretty run out, or pretty dried out now. And I want to do a nice little line across here. That's the shadow of Kirby's body onto his foot. And then I'm going to give it a little bit darker across the bottom like this too. And then over here, I also want a little bit darker around the bottom to kind of give him a little bit of a shadow. You don't have to do any of this part if you don't want to, but it's kind of cool to see how you can. I'm going to rinse a little bit of that red out and go back in and blend that just a little bit. Okay. All right, now we're ready to go on to the black. I think I'm going to go ahead and use my thick or my medium brush to do the words of his name. Actually, I'm not going to bother with that quite yet. Let's go ahead and switch. I'm going to go to my small brush. I know not all of you did the name the same, so I want to give you time to do it however you want. So we'll do the parts we need to do together first. All right, so with this small brush, we're going to work on his eyes for a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and rub my brush around in here. I want a nice deep black. I'm still trying to keep the paint only on the tip of the brush. We don't want paint all the way up. I don't know if you guys can see this, but I don't want paint all the way up onto my metal part. We don't ever want to do that. So try to use just the tip of your brush all the time. Again, when you are painting, you want to use the very tip of your brush to get the skinniest lines. Be careful wherever if you try to put your hand down, be really careful that you don't put it in wet paint. So this whole middle part of his eye is going to be filled in black. We want to make sure to leave these circles white. And we're even going to go down and trace around his eye a little bit as well. And I will show you. So I'm going to fill in this whole middle part. Trying to be careful as I go along the edges. Black is hard to take off. So you want to be careful. Make sure you get it right where you want it to be. Always be looking ahead. Okay, we get a little bit more paint on my brush, and I'm going to go ahead and trace down around the blue part of his eye also. Also remember, we always want to be dragging the brush behind your hand, right? So the wood part leads the way, the brush follows. You don't ever want to go brush side first. Okay, there's that eye. I'm going to go ahead and do the second eye the same way. All right, now using that same black, I'm going to outline his mouth, his arms. We're going to outline around the microphone, around his feet. Okay, so just stick with me. We're going to start just outlining everything. One of the things that we do want to, that we're filling in all the way with black is going to be this part of his headphones that goes all the way across the top. Don't forget about the little earpiece part over here. So this part that goes across the top, we want to fill in all the way with black. Now I'm probably going to speed this up a little bit, speed up the video as I'm painting, but just kind of be watching, see where, pause it whenever you need to. Push play when you're ready to go on, and just kind of follow along. Basically, we're going to outline almost everything with black now, using this small brush and trying to use the tip of the brush. This part I want to add a little bit more shadows to it. I want it to be a little bit darker. So I'm just kind of pulling some lines down of black kind of down into it. And I'm going to use a little bit of water, just water, to see if I can blend that a little bit better. Okay, so that's a little bit darker. Now I'm going to keep going with my outlining. Okay, one of the things we don't want to outline is this line between the spotlight and the sky. These lines that go up, we're not going to outline those. I'm going to take just a second real quick and show you how we want to do this microphone. So I've got just a little bit of black on my brush. It's mostly water. And I'm just going to do a few lines coming down, kind of in random places. And then a few lines going across. And that's going to give it, kind of make it look like it's a mesh like a microphone would be. Some of mine are a little bit thicker than others, that's okay. Some a little darker. Some are going to go up and down and some are going to go side to side to kind of make it look like a mesh microphone. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and outline my another thing that we don't want to outline actually real quick. So we're not outlining between the spotlight and the sky. We're also not going to outline between the sky and the grass, but we're going to add some little grass marks. Can you guys see those little grass lines? So while I still have this little bit of black on here, I'm going to go ahead and start doing just a few little, just kind of random, some of them a little bit taller, some a little bit shorter, all along this horizon line here. We want them to be pretty random looking. You don't want them to all be in a row, all going the same direction, all the same width. We want them to be random. Now that I've got those main ones on there, I'm going to add some water to my brush. Even touch it on the side a little bit. And I'm going to do a few more down through here, but they're going to be lighter. And we kind of want them in clumps. We're just adding a little bit more grass through here. Kind of like little clumps of grass. Happy little clumps of grass. Okay, I'm gonna leave that alone for a minute and I'm gonna go back in and finish outlining my stars and filling in my notes and outlining them. I still need to do the word Kirby. I think I'm just going to do it in black based off of everything else, but I'm going to use my medium brush so it's a little bit thicker. So as we do this, let's see, I need a little bit more water in there. I always want to make sure I'm using just the tip of the brush and making sure I'm not resting my hand on anything that's wet paint. Let's see. I think I'm going to make some parts just a little bit thicker than other lines. Oh man, that's getting thicker than I want. That's okay. Okay, you're still just painting along here, and then I'm going to show you how to do some little highlights on your notes. Oh, that got a little bit too light there, so I'm going to add a little bit more paint and go over it one more time. Okay, you guys, we are almost finished. The very last thing, I just want to show you how to make some little highlight notes in your notes if you want to do it, or in your words if you want to do it. I'm not going to do it in these words. But before we do it, you just need to make sure that there's no wet spots. I don't know if you guys can see some of these parts shining. Obviously my words are still wet. There's a tiny wet spot in this note. So before you continue on, you need to very, very carefully make sure that it's dry. So one way you can do it is to just wave it a little bit like this. But again, I got to keep it mostly flat. If I put it upright, it's going to drip and run down. So if you're going to wave it, you just got to be so, so careful. You can also blow on it, right? Okay, my notes are dry for the most part. So all I'm going to do is in the spots that I want little highlights, I'm going to get just water on my small brush. And I'm going to rub it back and forth just a little bit in a couple of spots. I'm going to do a little spot right there, and I'm going to do a little spot across the bottom. So I just got it kind of wet and I rubbed it back and forth a little bit on there. Now I can take my paper towel again, I put my finger up in there and just carefully dab it right on those spots. And see how it kind of pulled the paint back up and it makes it look like a little reflection spot on there. It's not really necessary, it's just kind of fun. It's kind of a cool technique that you can do with watercolors. So again, I'm gonna do the same thing with this other note. I'm gonna do a little reflection spot on the top part here, a little curve, and then kind of on the bottom a little curve, and I'm just rubbing it back and forth with just water. And I'm going to do a little one up here in the flag. This is called the flag of the note. Take my paper towel, dab it carefully. I'm actually just kind of pushing it, I'm not really dabbing it, because you don't want to move it around to different spots, or it's going to, the paint that's on here is going to transfer over to the new spot. So you got to use a clean spot on your paper towel each time. Okay, that's it. I'm all done. Last thing I want to do for sure is remember to rinse out these brushes so good. When you rinse them out, you need to rinse them out under clean water in your sink. Use a tiny bit, little teeny drip of dish soap and rub that dish soap around through the bristles of your paintbrush, right? And then rinse them out again and rubbing your bristles, and then when you're done, you want to squeeze it to make a nice point. Okay, so I use 3 fingers, squeeze and pull to make a nice point again. Make sure that you dry out your brushes. That's really important. Okay, you guys, we're all finished. Hey, do you remember my kitty? He came down and sat in the sink. I think he wanted to say hi to you guys. That's what he always does during art class, right? All right, I've got my brushes all washed out, nice and clean and reshaped and sitting out to dry. I hope you took care of yours too. I just want to show you real quick. Here's my original one. This is the one I did today. They're a little bit different. You can do yours however you want. And I would love to see pictures of how yours turned out. Also, if you have got any ideas of stuff that you would like to paint, we could do watercolors, we could do acrylic paintings. If there's any ideas that you have that you'd really love to do, let me know. I would love to try to figure it out, okay? Maybe we can do another painting together, or I don't know, something else. We'll do some more art together, okay? And I cannot wait until we get to hang out together in person. But until then, have fun. Make lots of memories during this time, okay? Miss you guys.